of May, our 4th of May Senate Democratic Caucus, celebrating our pro tem's birthday, and here to discuss a number of important things that are coming up this week that are actually session priorities. So, but first, to update us, Senator Balint, the birthday girl, would you be kind enough to please update us on a couple of things that you are on your plate?
Sure. And just to be clear, these are not caucus specific items. They are relevant to the entire Senate. So I'll be briefing the minority caucus as well. First thing is, it came to our attention yesterday that people may not be aware that that our branch of government, the legislative branch, has hired an HR director for the first time. This came out of the work of the Joint Legislative Management Committee over the past year. Her name is Arlene Donovan, no relationship to our AG. She comes to us from a hospital in the region, the greater Boston region, and she is working out of the Pink Lady. Her office will be just across the parking lot from our complex here. She has done some preliminary work with us for Joint Legislative Management Committee, looking at the issues of compensation and making sure that our compensation protocols and policies are in line with other legislatures. She is a delight. She's whip smart, and we're going to set up an opportunity for senators to meet with her. After we gavel out, we'll send out a Zoom invitation for people to be able to meet with her. She looks forward to that. The other thing I wanted to say is, I know it's been on everyone's mind as to what things are going to look like come January. And, I think the sentiment is we would all like to be back in the building in some way. We want to do it safely. We want to do it carefully. There's a lot of factors that go into that decision making. One of the first orders of business was having a space study done about the Capitol complex and what some of the options were for offices and for committee meetings, and making sure we have enough room to convene safely. We do understand that ancillary to those decisions will also be decisions about what will technology look like for the legislature going forward. Some decisions involving the public in that way and the press, those are going to be much longer, broader conversation than just simply looking at, logistically, how do we make sure we have the space that we need for everyone that needs offices. So you may not be aware that our legislative operations portion of the building is slated to have a new boiler system put in. So even if we weren't dealing with the pandemic, we were already dealing with some space issues related to getting them safe places to work as they're doing that work on the boiler system. The other piece that is related to this is that we're in the middle of having the HVAC system updated for the Capitol, but it's not done yet. And so that comes into play too, in terms of the volume of people that we can have safely in the State House. So I just wanted to let you know that the Joint Legislative Management Committee is looking at some of these issues. The Joint Rules Committee will be looking at other parts of this. The jurisdiction will fall to various committees. And in Title II, Chapter 19, there is a Legislative Advisory Committee on the State House. We anticipate also having that committee doing some of the legwork for us in the next few weeks to figure out recommendations that should come before either Joint Legislative Management or Joint Rules. So as I know more, I will update you, but I just wanted to let you know those conversations are happening, and they will certainly be vetted by more people than just your pro tem or your Speaker of the House. I just wanted to be clear. We're just in the early stages, and we have a lot of pieces to figure out. There was a report that came out last week. It's the Freeman, French, and Freeman report, which was looking at space that we currently occupy and some space that we may be able to get from the administration to expand our footprint over the next few years as we figure out how to deal with the ongoing impact of the pandemic. And it is a report that we commissioned. And I just want to be clear with everyone, it is not a plan, okay? It is just simply recommendations that we could choose to follow or not follow, okay? And so I wanted to say that first before I had Carolyn send out the committee report, the report that went to the Joint Legislative Management Committee from Freeman, French, and Freeman. I will get that out to all of you, but I wanted to say that up front because I don't want you to read it and think that this is the plan for what we're going to be doing. It's just raising a variety of issues. And I just want to flag for you that there is a part of the report that is bringing up the question of what does it look like for the public and the press to be in the building when we're still trying to figure out the pandemic. And I just want to go on the record here as saying we are absolutely committed to making sure that there is access to our work for the public and the press. And we're going to figure out what that's going to look like. But so there is a part of the report that seems to imply otherwise. And of course, that is a top priority for us, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also our constitutional mandate that the doors of the State House are open. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the majority leader and just know that you'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Balint. That's good to know because I think all of us have been curious about that, and it'll be great to read that report. So I see that Senator Sears is here. On deck, we're going to be talking about the pensions work that the Senate has just passed out of Senate Government Operations. We're also going to talk about the sexual consent bill. And Senator Sears, have you finished with the retirement party, or do you need to go first because you have to go to the retirement party?
We already know about.
You're muted, Dick.
Dick, you're muted.
Make sure we notify.
Yeah, I think that's going to be on my tombstone. Dick, you're muted. But as I finished the retirement party. Thank you.
Go first.
Yeah, I'm fine to go anytime you want, Allison.
Okay, but so you're all set with, okay. Then why, Dick, Senator Sears, why don't you start, and then we'll go to the pensions, and then we'll go to the education bill that Andy Perchlick's going to update us on.
Great.
Right.
H-183 has to do with consent, and I think the committee, really took an awful lot of hard work into this bill. It was not easy. The issues regarding when someone consents to having a sexual relations with another are, extremely difficult to talk about. And some of the examples given were not the best out of the committee, and it got notoriety, unfortunately. But the issue, and the committee stuck with the issue, is what do we do with a state that's got a 40-year-old consent statute on the books? So it hasn't been the terms for consent have not been updated in 40 years. And what that can often do is create problems in prosecution, create problems in who meant what did they actually say. And obviously the world has changed a lot in 40 years. I might say that your Committee on Judiciary was really looking for what can we do to best describe the situation where somebody's actually giving consent. And the House version and current law tells you what it's not, doesn't tell you what it is. And that's a key component of what we tried to change. And so we looked to other states, we looked at the recently upgraded military laws regarding consent. And what we came up with, and I'm going to read the House version. Consent means words or actions by a person indicating a knowing and voluntary agreement to engage in a sexual act. Our version says consent means the affirmative unambiguous and voluntary agreement to engage in a sexual act which can be revoked at any time. We felt that this was much more descriptive of what is consent rather than what it's not. There was a little disagreement between the state's attorneys and the Attorney General on this. The Attorney General felt that because of case law and so forth, there might be, he was somewhat hesitant to it. Actually, it was David Scher from the Attorney General's office to the agenda. But Rory Thibault,
just need you to be a little louder.
okay, I'm sorry. Rory Thibault from the Washington County State's Attorney's Office, who handled this case or this bill throughout the process, was very happy with this change. He felt that, and he was a military JAG officer, so his background was with the military standards, and he felt that this was a good standard. The Network Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault supports this version, as do other groups. So that's number one controversy. And the other body has made it known that they're, what's the allure of Oklahoma? Well, it's not really Oklahoma. It's something that we got from them. The other sections of the bill weren't really changed that much in the Senate version. That's sections 1. Section 2 wasn't changed at all. And in section 3, this is trial procedure. There was a few changes. We made a few changes there, but I don't think they're as consequential as what the House said. We got to lewd and lascivious behavior, and we're asking the Sentence Commission to look at L&L because it's a really different type of sex crime than what you might normally see. And since we've changed the law several times, we want to look at how does it fit in with the consent laws now. But I will add that this came up a couple of times in our committee of what would be, for example, a lewd act that was committed in front of a person, but it's actually not on the person itself, or himself. So that was the discussion of that. We didn't quite have a solution. So we added that direction to the Sentencing Commission to look at that. We concurred with the House on data collection and reporting. We took out a section on a sexual violence study on campus that was in the House bill. I've since heard concerns from some members of our caucus, and I've asked Senator Campion's committee to look at it, look at the task force that was in the House bill. It's called Intercollegiate Sexual Violence Prevention Council. And hopefully Senator Campion's committee will look at it, either recommend that we join concur with the House, concur with Judiciary to take it out, or maybe make changes. One of the things that's most noticeable about it is it runs until 2028, which seems like a long time for a council to run, to us anyway, in Senate Judiciary. But we're asking the Education Committee. Senator Campion has graciously agreed to take it up in this committee, and we'll await that. While it's in it now, the bill's in appropriations right now. And there was an appropriation in the bill of $40,000 for to the Center for Crime Victim Services. Excuse me.
Is this the forensic nurse?
Yeah, and that was put into the budget. So it's not necessary to carry here. We didn't know, I still don't know. I mean, there probably will be a conference committee, and I'm hopeful that the bill will pass this year. But if it didn't, your Senate Judiciary Committee wanted to make sure that this provision, the $40,000 for forensic nurses, would stay in, would be in the budget this year, so that could go forward.
Great.
So that was placed in the budget.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions? I think that's great that Senate Education is going to take up that section. Thank you very much. Because I know I've heard from a number of people that they're hoping that this will be discussed. Great. Any questions for Senator Sears before we move to pensions?
If I may, I'll
Yes.
just add that,
Senator
yeah,
Kane.
we do plan on taking it up, particularly in light of what happened at the University of Vermont. And I think timing is still a question for us, but I believe Senator Sears mentioned it is indeed in a trope. So hopefully we'll get to it by start looking at it Thursday morning.
Great.
We'll keep senators posted.
Terrific. Thank you very much. I think then we will move, given our time, we have only half an hour left. Thank you, Senator Sears. Senator White, would you be kind enough to update us on what the Senate what Senate Government Operations has done with our pensions retirement bill?
Sure. Well, there are two main parts to the bill. One is the governance structure, and one is the task force to look at the benefits itself. So I don't know if you would prefer me to work off what we did to the House bill or what we've done to the way things used to be. And I will start by saying that I think that there have been problems with VPIC. That is true. I'll do governance first. VPIC is the Vermont Pensions Investment Committee, and what they do is they invest our money in the pension plan. And there have been problems, and I will summarize them with 5 statements. They were expensive and misunderstood investments, lack of expertise and inadequate investment staff, over-reliance on Wall Street for guidance, investment meetings that lacked focus as well as strategic direction, and terrible returns versus comparable pension funds. So since 2017, there's been a new chair of the board, and this has changed, and they've made significant progress in the recent years under the current chair and the chief investment officer. And the investment performance has improved relative to other pension systems nationwide, and investment fees have been reduced. The reforms that are in this bill right now are intended to build on this momentum and take VPIC to the next stage of professionalism. So what this does is around VPIC is it changes the membership, it changes the board and the makeup of the commission itself. It makes it a commission rather than a committee. So it'll be a standalone commission. It will not be connected to the treasurer's office. It will be have its own investment staff. So it doesn't rely on other staff, and it doesn't rely as much on Wall Street. They were losing a ton of money to Wall Street investors. And there are changes to the makeup of the board in terms of making sure that the voices at the table have a degree of independence and financial expertise. And that's important because we need to have people who can question what's happening and are not aligned in any way to the consultants. So it's going to create independence from political pressure on key decisions, and explore question on appropriate internal staff versus Wall Street fees, and have a better partnership through the oversight committee, have a better partnership with the legislative oversight to prevent problems from getting further out of control. So that's the governance side of it. Then the benefits side of it is there's a task force set up to actually look at what what the packages should be going forward in order to be sustainable. And that is their charge. And they have a number of charges, but I'm not going to go into them in detail right now. But that's the task force. And we've heard on both of them that there needs to be balance. And we believe we have come to the right balance on both of those boards. So I don't know how much more detail you want right now. I think that it's best to see if people have questions.
But you might just mention the third board, which is.
Oh, the third board is the oversight. We set up a legislative oversight committee, and that came from many areas suggested that this might be an answer. And VPIC, the chair of VPIC, was very pleased that this happened, because it means that the legislature really does own this issue and will have continuing oversight over it, other than just through standing committees once a year when we get reports.
Terrific. Thank you. Are there any Senator Kitchell?
Regarding the legislative task force, what we've done in a couple of areas, we have done it in transportation and we've done it in healthcare, is to have the chairs of the key committees constitute the task force. Obviously, this is a huge budgetary issue. It's a big government operations issue. What is the composition of the task force? And it seems to me part of that is to make sure that what action needs to be taken, the chairs of the committees set the agenda, know the priorities, and it's a recognition that it's something that requires the attention of identified committees. So I just wondered if you could speak to the task force composition.
You're talking about the task force, not the oversight committee, right?
I'm sorry, the legislative oversight.
Legislative oversight committee is, I'll have to look it up now. I think it's 3 House and 3 Senate, and it doesn't specify who they should be, where they should come from. I think that we've left that up to the Committee on Committees and the Speaker.
Right.
And I think that it could be the chairs of the appropriate committees. It could be somebody that really has an expertise in pensions and retirement systems. We did not specify who it should be.
Okay. Just wondering. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on pensions for Senator White?
Just,
Senator Hooker.
thank you. Senator White, on the Oversight Committee, how often will VPIC be communicating with them throughout?
As often as the Oversight Committee asks them to, but they're required to give them a report. I think it's once a year when they do a big report in October, and it's usually available in November. And they're required to do it then. But the Oversight Committee will have the ability to call in members from VPIC or the chair to come and testify to them anytime they choose, just as any other Oversight Committee would.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Senator Starr. You're muted, Bobby. You're up. Now we've lost you. Anybody in? Okay, well, you're still muted. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, Jeanette, how often are they gonna have to review the pension funds on an annual basis so that if things aren't going well, they can move it or move the funds from one place to another? How often are they gonna review the investments?
Well, the VPIC will be reviewing their investments on an ongoing basis. every 3 years, they are going to have to look at the, I think it's called, I don't have the name right here in front of me now. I think it's called asset and liability study. And so then that's where they make projections, but they have to do that every 3 years, but they will be reviewing their investments regularly. And that's one of the things that they have done over the past year is that they reviewed the last 3 or 4 years. They've reviewed their investments and made changes. And that's why we're in a much better shape right now than we were 5 years ago.
Well, that's very important because the way the market moves around today is much different than the way it used to be, kind of stable and
Yeah.
would only move a little now and then. So that's, I don't know if that 3-year deal's a good deal or not, but I know those things should be reviewed constantly or couple of times a year, and then at the end of the year, you make changes if necessary.
Well, we didn't tell them how often they have to review their investments. That's their job, is to do the best with their investments that they can. And the 3-year review actually used to be 5 years, which is one of the things that got us in trouble. And it was resetting I think it's called asset and liability. I have to look, asset and liability study. So they're required to do that every 3 years now. And some people had suggested doing that every year, but they felt that by constantly reviewing the investment package, that they would have a handle on it, and then every 3 years make this adjustment.
Great, thank you. Senators, I see Senator Sears and Senator Lyons. Senator Sears? You're muted.
I guess, yes, my question, Jeanette, I think I just heard you say that that's why we're better off than we were.
Yes.
I thought we were in deep trouble. And so I'm a little bit taken back by a statement that we're better off. It could be worse, I suppose, but we've heard that the investments were poor, that the returns weren't what were expected, and that we're putting about, and Senator Kitchell can correct me, but I believe about 14% of the general fund money goes into pensions. So I don't think we're all that well off. And I'm really concerned that we're not going to be prepared next year to make the changes necessary.
Well, in terms of being better off, we're better off in terms of our investments than we were. We have a huge unfunded liability. That is true. And the OPEB is a huge issue. But we are better off than we were. Our investments are have better returns than they have had. And as our what's he called? GFO guy told us that we are now in
We've moved up.
are in better position in relation to other pension funds than we've ever been. And I believe that we've moved from the bottom 5% to the top 19% in terms of pension funds in their performance. So the current chair has been making changes over the last 3 or 4 years, and the changes, some of them he's been able to do on his own, and some of them he couldn't do because of the structure and the statutes and how we defined them. And not having the expertise on the board was a real hamper for him. So that's what these changes are intended to do, is to move us forward and build on the improvements that they've already made.
Thank you.
Senator Lyons.
So thank you, Senator White. I think the work that your committee has done really is going to provide a great improvement. I do have a couple of questions. One is, as you were reviewing information, did you look at how other boards provide, oversight boards provide guidance on criteria for investments?
And so thinking about what other states might do or what other organizations that have investments might do to provide guidance. I don't know. The concern is, do we depend on the individual coming into the board to make improvements, or do we have some established guidelines that support ongoing assurance that we aren't going to have a drop? I was going to say failure, but we don't want to drop down again to the lowest 5%. So just what assurance do we have for criteria that will provide for ongoing good results?
Well, I think that what we have grown to understand, I believe it is that it is not our responsibility to set the guidelines for the investment committee, that the investment committee commission does their investments, and then they report to us, and they'll have to report to us regularly. So the oversight committee will have some ability to make sure that things are going the way they should. They also are commissioning a study with a consultant around best practices for investment commissions, and that will be coming back in December. So the oversight committee and the legislature can look at the best practices that are the study that's coming back. And that includes a lot of what you're talking about and how we relate to other boards in the country. And then there was one other, I can't remember the third point I had, but I'm sure it was really important.
So
It was all very important. No, thank you for that. I think that helps clarify and does answer my question. So thank you.
okay. We have time for one more question before we go to Senator Perchlik. Senator McCormick.
You're muted.
Dick, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks. First, two disclaimers. Given the committee process, my attention has been elsewhere, and I don't really know very much about this. So I'm tending to trust the committee. Secondly, I'm getting communications from people with points of view and with some expertise, and you're getting praise. And sometimes from quarters I'm surprised at. You're getting praise, for example, from labor, who have been agonizing about this for months. And now I'm hearing that, that you've done good work. That said, I'm also hearing from the sarcastic, hostile constituents who are saying, I guess one email puts it in a nutshell, and I'm just asking, how would you answer that? Which is, the guy says sarcastically, I guess the problem with the pensions is we don't have enough committees. And they're giving us committees, and committees are not a solution. How do I answer them?
Well, first of all, the VPIC is already a committee. It's just being made into an independent commission. So that already is there. And we have to have an investment commission. I don't think you want the legislature doing the investments. So we have that investment commission. The task force is looking at the benefit packages and coming back. That's a very temporary group of people who's going to be looking over the summer and fall at what we should have in place for our benefit packages and come back to us, and then we will make the decision. And the only committee in here that's being set up is the oversight committee. And we felt that one of the reasons that the legislature itself, the whole legislature, wasn't paying close enough attention to this over the past 10 years. And that's one of the reasons we got in this jam that we're in right now. And so the oversight committee is meant to do the same thing that justice oversight does and other oversight committees do. I don't know how to answer that, but I know that there are people who don't like committees at all, and they'd like us to just make a decision and do something, but I don't know how else to answer that.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I think we have 10 minutes left, so we're going to shift to education. And Senator Perchlik, I know you are reporting a bill, and we'd love to have you update us on that.
Yeah, I'll be quick. H426 is a bill about school construction. and all the school facilities, educational facilities, K through 12 in the state that are in basically deplorable condition. Seems to be agreement that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The state used to help the schools out with the program of school aid to school construction that was suspended in 2007 and then suspended again for some reason in 2008 more permanently. And so this tries to get us back on the road of supporting our schools in their buildings and facilities, developing sort of a plan to figure out how to get there and how to fund it. And it uses ESSER money. ESSER's is the elementary, secondary schools emergency relief funds. All the schools will get ESSER money directly, but then the state gets 10% of the total. And so that goes to AOE. So the money in here is that part of the 10% that's going to Agency of Education. What it does is it requires AOE working with others to update the standards. They're called standards, but they're not quite standards. More of a guide that we used to send out to schools when we had the aid to construction program. The main part of the bill requires AOE working with consultants to do a school inventory this summer of kind of all the buildings, a quick look so it would help the schools use their own ESSER money and just kind of figure out on a broad brush where we all are. And then next year it does what we're calling an assessment, which is a more in-depth listing of all the schools, all the facilities needs. And then they also require next year to create a scoring system of some sort so that the state would be able to figure out what school facility needs would be at the top of the list if we were to, come up with some type of long-term funding. It also helps do some training for school facilities managers and requires each district to identify a school facilities manager. Some haven't done that. And it requires AOE to help with developing some kind of workforce development. So we have people in the schools that kind of know how to manage these facilities. It creates a limited position at AOE that kind of oversee and coordinate all this work that we're doing with the school facilities. One little administrative change we made, all schools are required to go out to public bid for any work that they do that's over $15,000. That's been unchanged for a long time. So we made a small change to raise that to $40,000. So if it's under $40,000, they can just get the work done without going through the whole public bid process. It also requires AOE to hire some consultants that will help the schools on spending their ESSER money and also help AOE to kind of help spending this money and working with all the things that we're requiring them to do. It also sets aside $1 million of the state ESSER money that the AOE could grant to schools that maybe they had their own ESSER money and have a big project and just didn't quite have enough to get it done. The state would be able to provide them the little extra money to get the project done. There's also a expansion of the indoor air quality program that we did last year that Efficiency Vermont has been in all the schools working on ventilation. They identified a lot of other problems with heating systems, whether they're there that they didn't have the time or the authority to work on. So this program, because of an amendment that we agreed with appropriations, we took the money out, but the program kind of design will still happen. We'll design the program and hopefully fund it next year if we can do that. So it's in there as a program to be designed but not funded, and that's the short story.
Thank you so much. Can you just give senators and the public a notion of how big the challenge is at the moment? Because there's already a preliminary number, I understand, of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are sort of needed in repairs. Can you give people that?
It's a big number. Nobody really knows, and that's part of the goal of this. Is like, can we get a better handle on how bad it is and how big of a number as it is? Some people say it's going to be definitely in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, but we don't really know. So that's part of the goal here, is to try to figure that out.
Because the number that I've heard is that it's over $560 million already, just in initial anecdotal collection of this as the House started this work. Are there any questions for Senator Perchlik?
Just a
Senator
comment,
Kitchell and then Senator Hook.
Clarkson, that it's been 15 years since we helped schools do construction. So that number shouldn't surprise us with
No,
all of the things that have happened in the interim.
yeah, I agree. Senator Kitchell?
Yeah, there's one aspect of this bill that I think we talked about last year, and I just want to bring it up again. And that is, we had one school, it was in an area of the state that put forth a very, very expensive building project. And it had things like indoor turf or natural, and the list went on and on. And the cost was very great. And right now, those costs all fall into the education fund. There's not additional in the capital bill. There's just not the bonding capacity to do more. And it raised the question around the extent to which there are parameters in terms of what gets funded, and that gets into one of the provisions to really set forth some standards around funding, because under the statewide funding mechanism, those costs that could be, one school is got sewerage in their basement and another is planning what is perceived to be perhaps a more elaborate building plan than is necessary to support this mission of the school. So I just wanted to bring that out to people, that was one of the things, looking at how to create that standard. And I know Andy mentioned it, but taking a real life example, that bonding did go down. So we didn't have to deal with it at that point, but it raised the question around what should be parameters, because really you're obligating expenditures for everyone in the state under our funding structure for public education. So that was just a connection from last year that I just wanted to make for people.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you all. This is terrific. Unless there are no other questions for Senator Perchlik, I think we are done and we get to dive back into our afternoon committees. Thank you all. This was terrific.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank